Good. All right, everybody good? Excellent. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Engine 9, Ladder 6. We are so proud to be here with our firefighters, our fire officers who have a lot to be proud of every year. But turns out that 2016 was a banner year, an historic year for our fire department, a year of exceptional achievement. And we wanted to celebrate here in this House what the fire department has achieved this year. And this is literally, we're going to give you 100 years of perspective on this. It's absolutely amazing. 2016 saw the fewest fire deaths in New York City in any year since statistics were first kept going all the way back to 1916. So literally a full century. This was the fewest fire deaths of any year in the last 100 years in New York City, and all the credit goes to the men and women of the FDNY. There's a lot to be proud of. Give yourselves a round of applause, everybody. This is amazing by any measure. And I want to say at the outset, we strive to stop every fatality. The men and women of this department have put their lives on the line regularly, and they never give up. We strive to save every life. When you look at this year, 2016, just in comparison to the previous, it's amazing unto itself the progress that's been made in the last year. We saw 19% fewer deaths than just the year before. And there's many reasons for that. First and foremost, the bravery and the ability of our firefighters and fire officers. But also, we continue to improve response time. Every improvement matters when it comes to response time. We have a 5-second improvement across the board in New York City in 2016 compared to 2015. Now, we celebrate this extraordinary good news. We celebrate the lives that were saved. But it's impossible at the same time to not stop for a moment and think about the life we lost, who was one of the most distinguished members of this department, who was destined for greatness, had already done so much for this city and this department. And 2016, we only lost one man in the course of duty, but we lost a great man, Chief Michael Fahey. And we will keep his memory alive, and he will inspire all those who serve in this department going forward. I want to thank Commissioner Nigro. You'll hear from him in a moment. Of course, I want to also thank all the leadership of the FDNY President, including First Deputy Commissioner Bob Turner and Chief of Department Jim Leonard. Thank you for your excellent leadership. And I want to thank a man who represents our fire officers and the leadership they provide every single day in firehouses all over the city. Jake LaMonda, President of UFOA, thank you for being here and joining us in this celebration. Now, in addition to the remarkable efforts of the FDNY, once the alarm goes off, the bell rings, and the trucks roll, there's something else that happened in the last year that has been one of the reasons for this extraordinary decline in fatalities, and that is an intense focus on educating the public, reaching out, making sure the public understood better how to protect themselves, how to protect their families, particularly how to make sure they had smoke alarms present. What happened in the last year is extraordinary. 700,000 plus New Yorkers were reached by the FDNY public education efforts. An amazing commitment by this agency. 700,000 people, that's almost 1 in 10 New Yorkers, were reached directly and given the information they needed and the reminder of the things they need to do to keep their families safe. And the Get Alarmed initiative led to smoke alarms being given to 113,000 New Yorkers, more than was the original goal. I want to thank the City Council, and you'll hear from our council colleagues in a moment. I want to thank the council, the Red Cross, and all our other partners who played such a crucial role in this effort, and it really made a difference. I also want to say, finally, that we made another important investment in terms of saving lives, and that was the investment in additional ambulance tours. $40 million over the last 2 years. Again, thanks to the City Council for their strong belief in making this investment and agreeing to it in the budget. We added 134 ambulance tours from January 15th to now. That's also had a very positive impact on response times. Response times for medical emergencies down 21 seconds, meaning our ambulances are getting to the scene 21 seconds faster, and that can make a huge, huge difference. So that investment in more ambulance tours is already helping to make New Yorkers safe. At the same time, this department answered a record number of calls for medical assistance. So that's a crucial combination, answering more calls, but making the response time faster at the same time. I want to offer my congratulations on behalf of all 8.5 million New Yorkers, Commissioner, to you, to all the leaders, to all the men and women of this department. This is a record to be very, very proud of, and it means that people are alive today because you continue to do your work better and better each year. So I want to offer my congratulations to you. Well done.
Thank you.
And just a couple of words in Spanish before I turn to Commissioner Nigro. Quiero dar las gracias a nuestro Departamento de Bomberos por un año histórico. El año pasado tuvimos la menor cantidad de muertes por incendios en un siglo. Aumentamos los turnos de ambulancia y así pudimos mejorar en gran medida nuestra respuesta a emergencias médicas. With that, again, with greatest congratulations, our Commissioner, Dan Nigro.
Thank you, Mayor. And I'd like to join the Mayor in remembering Chief Michael Fahey as we celebrate today a great year for the fire department. A very sad day in a great year was the day we lost Chief Fahey. So we remember him and his family today. Our department has a great history, 151-year history. And it's nice that we're here on Canal Street. This is the first firehouse I ever set foot in as a young boy. My father was assigned here, right here on Canal Street in Ladder 6, 70 years ago. Not the same firehouse, but exactly the same location. So it's nice to be here. And we're talking about a history of 100 years of statistics and 48 fire deaths being the all-time low. Behind me, there's a chart. It's very personal to me. Not intentionally, but it starts in 1970, which was, I was a young firefighter in 1970. In 1970, we lost 310 people to fire. We were losing almost a person every day. And through the progression, as you can see in that chart, as the bars go down from left to right, we've been doing better and better. And this year, an all-time low of 48. So while we were losing almost one person every day here in New York, now we're losing fewer than one person every week, and that's a tremendous accomplishment. In 30 of these deaths, we talk about smoke alarms. We're doing the best we can. In 30 of these deaths, there was still no working smoke alarm, and a working smoke alarm is critically important because it increases your chances to escape and survive a fire, and our department cannot overemphasize this fact. So last year, through our Get Along NYC program, we were supported by the Mayor, the City Council, the FDNY Foundation, the Red Cross, and KIDA. 113,000 smoke alarms were given out. Now, how did this program come about? I can tell you exactly. It was because of a horrific tragedy in Midwood, Brooklyn in March 2015. 7 children in the same family were killed in a fire with no working smoke alarms. And the mayor and I stood in the kitchen of that home and said to each other, what do we have to do? What can we do? And that program was born that morning. So it not only put those smoke alarms in homes, it raised awareness in every community about the critical need for smoke alarms. And it's not over. This year, we expect to install another 20,000 smoke alarms where needed in our city. As the mayor mentioned, we've educated over 700,000 New Yorkers in fire safety education this year. It's so important, it's critically important. The results show 48 fire deaths this year. They continue to go down. People in New York City are better educated than ever about fire safety. It is working. A quarter of these fatal fires took the lives of New Yorkers over age 70. So it's important for us, as we look at our statistics, to reach out to the senior population, and that's what we intend to do this year, to continue to reach out to our seniors. They're a vulnerable part of our population. Fires overall have decreased, including a 9% decrease in serious fires, and that's great news. It means that education, fire prevention, inspections are keeping our city safer. And we're getting to calls faster, as the mayor said. It's an improvement in response time. Overall, for fires, 5 seconds, 21 seconds for EMS, thanks to the investment the city has made in our department. We're getting to fires faster, critical patients faster, providing the treatment they need. All of these improvements are helping to save lives. And our success, it's a joint effort. It's an effort of brave firefighters, skilled medical professionals, diligent inspectors, and professional fire safety educators. So I thank every member of this department. I'm very proud to lead this department. They've showed themselves to be better than ever this year, and we celebrate. And next year, we will do an even better job to reach out to New Yorkers about fire safety, to install smoke alarms, and keep our city growing, safe and secure. So thank you.
Thank you very, very much, Commissioner. And I also want to turn to our colleagues from the City Council. The City Council has been very, very invested in making these public education efforts work. We could not do it without our colleagues in the Council. And two of the members who have made it a personal priority and a priority for their districts and beyond are here with us. First, I'd like to call upon Councilmember Andy Cohen of the Bronx.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First, I just want to congratulate you and the Commissioner on this tremendous achievement, and really thank the men and women of the FDNY, because the work is manifest here in these statistics. So really, you all deserve our heartfelt thanks. I'll say personally, the explosion that killed Chief Fahey happened in my district, and it really is one of the most profound things that's happened in my time in elected office. Being there that morning. So again, my gratitude and appreciation, really knowing the dangers of the work, are heartfelt. And it's been a true partnership. I think we've distributed thousands of smoke detectors in my district at street fairs, to senior centers, really getting the word out. And I feel like it's had a real impact. So I appreciate that partnership. I look forward to continuing that partnership, and you can count on me to do whatever we need to do to get the word out. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilman. Now I want to turn to Councilman Chaim Deutsch, who has been a key ally and also understood and felt deeply the tragedy in Midwood and understood the impact it had on the community, and was one of the leaders in going out to educate people so we would never have a tragedy like that again. Councilman Deutsch.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And educational outreach on fire prevention is most crucial. Awareness is important. This reduces fatalities and harm or house fires. And I have held over 24 fire prevention forums throughout my district. And I'm proud to be the initial sponsor in the City Council for Get Alarmed NYC. And I'm proud to say, and I was fortunate to have one individual at one of my forums who walked in and insisted to speak. And I let him up at the podium, and he got in front of hundreds of people thanking me and thanking the New York City Council for, if not for the fire smoke detector and carbon monoxide detector that he picked up from my office, from Get Alarmed NYC, his house and was burnt to a crisp. He got out at 4:30 in the morning, woke up his children, his wife and children, and he gave everyone his address if anyone wanted to pass by to see what his house look like. And he really thanked the city of New York. He really thanked that smoke alarm, carbon monoxide detector, for saving his life and his family's life. And this is something that we should all be proud of. And this is just one individual who came forward. And how many other people whose lives were saved because of Get Alarmed NYC. And in addition to that, since the Midwood fire, I have moved on to that block. I live just several hundred feet away where that fire tore apart the 7 young brothers and sisters, tore apart a family. And I pass by that house more than several times a day and look at that house, and that's why this is so meaningful to me. And this is so important, and outreach continuing. It's not just a one-week event, one-month event. This is a lifetime event where we need to educate and raise awareness on fire prevention. So I want to thank Melissa Marcoverito, the council speaker, Mayor de Blasio, who partnered with the City Council, with Kitty, and all the men and women of New York's bravest for being out there each and every day and putting their lives on the line. So thank you all for bringing this awareness to this such an important cause. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, we're going to take questions about the achievements of the fire department in 2016, about EMS, fire, anything related to that, and then we'll go on to other topics. Just want to see if we have anything on this first. Go ahead, Anna.
What was the average response time on Staten Island last year?
Staten Island to fires or EMS or both? To both.
All right, while you're looking that
Yeah,
up, let me jump ahead to the
another
next one. Give you a
question,
moment. Go ahead.
You would often talk about,
Say again?
the NYPD often talks about CompStat, for example, how they really analyze numbers. Just wondering what specific system the FDNY uses to look at these numbers and how you analyze them throughout the year.
So either Commissioner or Chief, you want to speak to the question of how you look at your numbers and what kind of adjustments you make based on it? Use the microphone there.
Sure. We have a unit called the MAPS unit, Management Analysis Plan and System. And we analyze all these numbers and determine, do we need more resources, less resources, what can we do, where are our fires occurring, what community boards. We try to match up fire safety education, inspectional activity to drive down. Both our fire marshals also do cause and origin. So we have a total approach to what caused the fire, how do we react to the fire, was our response time good, do we need to change procedures, what inspectional activity is needed, and also what education should we do for the public.
You want to go back to the first one about Staten Island?
Yes, 2016 Staten Island response time to serious calls on Staten Island was 7 minutes and 39 seconds, and to structural fires was 5 minutes and 10 seconds.
Follow-up to that, 2 years ago, you announced some additional funding to decrease response times in certain areas of the city, including Staten Island. And I was told at that budget address that the average response time in Staten Island was 6 minutes and 51 seconds. Why is it just...
Well, we got two different figures here, so why don't we, let's make sure, fair enough, let's go back and compare these against the information at the time of that budget address and show you how they
And
work.
was that response time for fire calls or for medical calls?
I think it was medical.
For medical calls.
All right, we'll come back on.
We can come back to that, but right now we're measuring our calls what we call end-to-end, and this is something new. This is from the time the call is accepted to the time we get there. 3 years ago, we were only measuring the time from the time the fire department received the call to the time we got there. So it's a little difficult to compare the response times from that. So I'd have to go back to another chart that showed the method of the measurement 3 years ago to today's method.
Get back to you.
Yeah,
Sure.
we'll make sure these guys will follow up with you. Go ahead, Laura.
The fires and fighting fires and responding to them is increasingly not the bulk of the work that the fire department does,
Not exactly. Well, the firefighters respond to approximately 800 medical calls a day. They might respond to more medical calls than structural fires, but they also respond to many other types of emergencies. So amongst the thousands of calls that the fire apparatus respond to on any given day, it's a mix of structural fires, emergencies such as gas leaks, auto accidents, you name it, subway issues, and medical calls. So it is a combination. Medical calls have become a significant part of the role of our firefighters, but they still do not occupy the bulk of their responses.
The Citizens Budget Commission in December 2015 said that 75% of the department's workload consists of responding to medical emergencies.
75, go louder, 75% of?
Of the workload of the department was responding to medical emergencies and incidents, and just 5% was devoted to fire.
Well, they're taking into account all the ambulance runs also. So if you factor in, we have 1.4 million medical calls a year. Many of those are not responded to by fire apparatus. They're responded to only by ambulances. So you have to look at what exactly they were speaking to.
Question is, the Citizens Budget Commission and some other budget watchdogs have said that more firefighters should be certified as EMTs so that they can respond to emergencies that don't necessarily require someone to be taken to a hospital. Do you think that that would be more fiscally prudent? What do you think of that?
Well, I think we'd have to have a change in the state regulations in order for anyone, ambulances or firefighters, to respond to calls and not transport people that called. It's a little bit of a difficult procedure. I think what they're saying is much of the workload of the fire department is switching to medical. Much of the workload, not all of the workload, nor should the fire department ignore the principal mission of a fire department, which is to protect the public from fire. But the fire department is looking at ways to enhance our training and include more of our resources to medical calls, absolutely. But we cannot overlook the tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands of other calls that are not medically related, that need a different skill set, that are acquired by firefighters.
David?
Just to follow on that, I mean, do you think certainly this very good number, in terms of the number of people that have died in fires, actually kind of supports the argument that some would want to make that, you know, the department should sort of start to transition into a different kind of department and maybe close down some of the firehouses?
Well, I think the department already has, and has for 20 years now, transitioned into a different department following the merger of EMS and the New York City Fire Department. So we have taken that into account. But like I said before, there are many types of calls that cannot be replaced simply by sending medical resources. And the department carefully measures that and sends sufficient medical resources and firefighting forces to the calls as they're required. And we continue to adjust each year to how things are changing in our growing city.
Two things, David. First, Dan Nigro was actually one of the leaders of the transformation of FDNY. Important reform was needed to bring the firefighting approach and the EMS approach together, and I think it's been a tremendous success. And he, you know, over the last 15, 20 years was in the center of that. But second, this is something I know personally a lot about because I was deeply involved in the effort to save firehouses going back to the first time that Mayor Bloomberg proposed cuts in firehouses. I think if we're celebrating today improvements in response time, if we're celebrating fewer deaths, it's exactly the wrong time to talk about cutting firehouses. Part of why we've succeeded is because we have personnel close to where people are. And our job, in fact, is going to be continue to reduce response time. We're very, very proud of this progress, but I want to go farther. Having in an incredibly densely populated city and a growing city, as you know, where we have real traffic issues all the time, having the firehouses near to the people, absolutely crucial. So I understand what the budget watchdogs are always looking for, but I would say when you're celebrating good news that we've saved a lot more lives, that's not a time to say, well, let's start cutting the budgets and, you know, moving away from a strategy that worked, I would say that's a time to stick with a strategy that's working and see if we can take it even farther. Yeah, Jen.
I see the number one cause is electrical fire. Is that something that people could be doing something differently in their homes, or is it more just, the wiring and you're kind of like out of luck?
No, it absolutely is. I think only 3 of those fires occurred in the hard wiring systems inside the homes. The majority are misuse of extension cords and power strips. And many of the power strips that folks use out there are not UL approved and are very dangerous devices. So we urge folks in our fire safety education to only use UL approved power strips and to be very careful with the use of extension cords. So that's the principal cause of electrical fires, is not home wiring, but it's the cords that we use.
Package UL approved?
It should say it right on the back of the device or on the package, and it's
Connect two together? I can put this in the paper. I feel like it's a... Is that,
what do you think?
I mean...
We're quizzing you, Jen. What do you think?
If it sounds like a bad idea, it most likely is. They're not made to be piggybacked, no.
Yeah, and Jen, it would be very helpful to put it in the paper.
Yes, it
because
would.
Not only do we want to tell people about the dangers of using the wrong equipment, but this is also, as we've talked about other times, when it's cold out, too many people are tempted to, open up their stove and use that to heat the apartment or do all sorts of other things that could be dangerous. In fact, let's just take one moment before the next question. Will you delineate the different dangers, because this would be great if people could include this to the maximum extent in your coverage, the different dangers when people try and heat their home that could cause a fire?
The most common things people do when it's very cold and they don't think their home or apartment is warm enough is to use the stove, which creates carbon monoxide in the apartment. It's not properly vented. They're made for cooking, not for heating. And the use of electric heaters, which are not banned, but they should be turned off before you go to sleep. They need to be kept at least 2 feet from anything combustible. They end up, the fires we've had, they're right next to the bed, they're right next to blankets. Eventually they heat up and they cause fires. So I know the tendency, we want to all stay warm, but we also, more importantly, need to stay alive.
Yeah. Go ahead.
One is the proportion of these that are happening in homes as opposed to businesses or other kinds of buildings.
Thank you for asking that. Our inspections, we do hundreds of thousands of inspections, most of which are in commercial buildings. We had no fire deaths this year outside of residential buildings.
Amazing.
Unless in buildings. We had a few in cars, we had one on a boat, but those that took place in buildings were in private homes and multiple dwellings. So, as always, and that's nothing new, that the majority of fires take place in inside residences, but this year, all of the fire deaths took place there.
Follow on that, just in terms of the sort of what's driving this. I saw that serious non-structural fires, the numbers went down, but does that mean that smaller fires are being cut off before they escalate and there's the same number of small fires? Is there a prevention factor that's keeping the number of small fires and everything else down?
Well, one thing, additional smoke alarms means that we get the call earlier, and the faster we can arrive, the smaller the fire tends to be. We try very, very hard to keep fires as small as possible, so I would say much of it is due to the diligence of our workforce and the skills that they apply in fighting fires. So I think people are doing a better job in keeping safe, and our firefighters are doing a better job in keeping them safe.
Do you have data on whether there are fewer, like all fires are being prevented or big fires are being prevented? Or?
Well, all fires are down, and large fires are down even more, a higher percentage.
Okay, Michael.
Mr. Mayor, you said there was a 21-second drop in response times for medical emergencies on average. What's the drop? And I'm assuming there was a drop because of the average you guys mentioned before for fires. What's the average drop for that?
So again, what I'm giving you are broad statistics, and the commissioner can interpret and also get you more backup, but it's 5 seconds reduction for fires, 5-second improvement in response time, 21-second improvement in response time for medical emergencies. Okay, any other questions on this? Going once, going twice. Okay, I'm going to just take a moment as people transition. I want us to pull this chart over. Give you guys another visual here. Stand up, everyone. Come join me.
It's like a chart of my life.
Yeah, this is really good. This chair out of the way. Okay. Gather around, everyone. This is good news. That is something right there. I know. Happy New Year. Okay, everybody ready? Okay, hold on, let's let them clear out. And hold on, Dave. Okay, Dave.
Mayor, on the governor's speech this morning,
Yeah.
it addressed two things. One, on the 100,000 affordable housing units to help with the homeless crisis, is that seen by you as certainly needed help and welcome, or is it another example of interference with the city? The other thing is...
Well, I'll do one at a time. Let me just speak to that. Dave, I think it is in a set of things in the speech I would say are promising in terms of helping New York City, but we still don't have the details. I think that's the big takeaway I'd say from the speech. I liked some things I heard for sure, but I got to see the details. We don't have the state budget yet, as you know. We haven't seen how these things are going to play out. So, of course, we would love more support for affordable housing in New York City. As you know, my plan for 200,000 apartments, that's going on no matter what. If the state's going to add additional support, that's fantastic. We especially need those supportive apartments to help reduce homelessness. The city's already committed to 15,000, and you heard the announcement recently. We're continuing to put those online. I have to tell you, I would have liked to have seen this stuff all resolved in the June state budget. That's when it was supposed to be resolved. I would have liked to have seen some of this money flowing already. But, you know, we certainly would love to see more resources come in from the state.
The question that I have about this overall, the speech, I think all of us saw it as the opposite of what Donald Trump is pushing in his agenda. But he never mentioned Donald Trump by name. Would you like to have seen him be a little bit more critical of Donald Trump?
Look, every leader has to make their own decision how to address the Trump situation, and the state of the state address is a particular venue. I will say, I think it's important that we, whenever we see President-elect Trump do anything that's hurting the people of New York City, we have to call it out, we have to act on it. But I think it's fair to say in a State of the State address, that's a sort of a bigger evaluation of what's going on in the state. That might not be the right occasion for that. Mara.
Yeah, so Mr. Mayor, this morning there were 9 subway lines that saw extensive delays, which is almost half of the city's subway infrastructure. Do you not control the subways out?
Could you say it again, Mara? I couldn't hear you. What was that last part?
You don't control the subway.
Thank you.
However, these are your constituents.
Of course.
Your city. You know, first of all, what should be done? I mean, there were tens of thousands of constituents who could not get to work.
Right.
The governor has proposed spending billions for JFK and LaGuardia. A lot of people think that's important too. But literally, I mean, I'm even wondering if there were concerns among fire marshals because people couldn't even move one way or another. And then the second part of that question is, when was the last time you rode the subway to work?
So let's be clear. Someone at the Second Avenue subway opening was asking me if I would take that subway line to work, and I did not have an opportunity to tell that individual to think about the route to Brooklyn, then to City Hall. So I'm going to continue doing exactly what I'm doing, going to my home neighborhood in the morning and then going to City Hall from there. But I take the subway, regularly. There's just opportunities come up where it makes a lot more sense to take the subway. I like taking the subway. I have throughout my life, so I keep doing that. On the first point, I think this is a very serious situation. I think you're raising a very important question. My constituents increasingly talk to me about congestion on the subway. I hear it all over New York City. I think it begs a very important question. Where are we going to get the investment we need for better subway rides, less congestion? What is it going to take? Now, the city, as you know, recently invested $2.5 billion in the MTA. That was not something that had been typical in recent years. That was a decision we made to try and help the MTA. But I think it is a very good question to say, of all the different priorities to address real transportation issues, what's most important? I, for one, care a lot more about the subways than I do about some of the other things that are being invested in. I would like to see more investment go into subways compared to almost anything else. But that's a decision, obviously, the state legislature is going to have to make and the MTA is going to have to make.
Just to be clear, on the first part of the question, do you remember the last time you took the subway to work? From Brooklyn to City Hall, I'm sure I could find out for you. I think it was maybe 3 weeks ago, something like that. Go ahead. Over the weekend, there was a lot of complaints from Staten Islanders about the plowing that was done before and after the storm, and some people were a little confused why that happened, given the changes you made to the plow system and how you disperse trucks. And one of the changes that was made this year was no more private contractors were dispatched by the city to tertiary streets. So I was wondering, is that something that you are concerned about, given the changes that were made?
No, I think we had very strong performance by the sanitation department and by our sanitation workers over the weekend. There were some areas we want to see improvement in, for sure. City Hall was constantly in touch with local elected officials, including Staten Island elected officials, looking for trouble spots and getting them addressed quickly. So there's always improvements and adjustments to make, but I feel very good about where sanitation department is now, and I certainly feel fine about the decision to have the tertiary streets covered by our own workers.
What do you say to people who are frustrated that they had to wait like a day and a half for a plow?
We always have to do better. We have, look, the sanitation department has proven itself over and over again, including in the biggest snowstorm in the history of New York City last year. But we continue to improve. As you know, we're getting more equipment in that will allow us to get at smaller streets better. Not all that was here. It was approved in the budget in June, so that new equipment's going to help. I think our own sanitation workers will do a better job than the private contractors on the smaller streets. But it is a big city, and we're going to constantly do better at reaching people as quickly as possible. I think overall performance was strong on the weekend.
Two questions on the state of the state, but we heard the governor talk about suggesting that there need to be reforms at Rikers Island. I'm wondering if those are conversations that you've already had with the governor, if you would welcome state involvement in reforming Rikers Island. And secondly, last year there was immediate concern at the state of the state speech about the city being asked to shoulder sort of a larger financial burden than it had historically. Any budget bombshells in this speech that you're worried about, or you have your staff trying to sort of get to the bottom of at this point?
Because it's a very good question, and because this speech for the first time was not accompanied by, the budget, we don't know yet the ramifications of everything that was being talked about in speech, which is why I'll express my praise for some of the things I heard, but until we see the details, and particularly the budgetary details, we can't pass a final judgment. It was different, I agree with you, than what we heard at the State of the State last year. But, we just have to be very sober about the fact that budget documents are really where the rubber hits the road, and we got to see that. And my understanding is that has to be out in the next week or 10 days, and that will be our chance to see. And that's when I'll be able to comment in detail. In terms of That's the news as it happens. All right. The governor made a glancing reference to Rikers Island. I wasn't sure what to make of that. We feel very good about the reforms that are in place. We've been working very closely with the federal monitor, as you know, and I think the pace of reform at Rikers is strong. My reminder to everyone, beyond Rikers are the other jails in our correction system. All of them are going through a process of culture change, different ways of recruiting officers, training them, a lot more checks and balances, a lot more of the reforms that Commissioner Pont has put in place to reduce violence, reduce the flow of weapons and contraband. All of this is happening, and I think it's happening very well. So, again, I didn't hear anything specific in the speech. We're going to continue working on the plan that we have right now. Jen?
There was some chatter about Hillary Clinton running for mayor against you in a primary. I was wondering what you thought of that. And also, you know, one of your comments always when people are running is you're comfortable running your record against anyone's. Would you be comfortable running your record against?
Look, let me start by saying one of her top lieutenants, who I know very well, Neera Tanden, made very clear on Sunday that Secretary Clinton does not intend to run for anything else again. So to me, that puts the whole thing to bed. So I don't deal in any speculation. I think that's a pretty clear statement. My general statement about what we've achieved in the last 3 years, I'm very comfortable going out to the people in New York City and talking to them about it, especially what we talked about just last week with the reduction in crime at the same time as we reduce stop and frisk. That's the kind of thing I'm going to go all over the city talking about. I'm very comfortable with it.
Sure.
Said that. So this was all late last week. I mean, did you have a couple of stressful days thinking Hillary Clinton might run? Did you reach out to her?
I did not reach out to her. What Neera said is exactly what I assumed. You know, it just made total sense that that was her last campaign, and one that, by the way, she won 3 million more votes than Donald Trump, and, you know, by any normal scenario should have prevailed. But I'm sure she's going to find a lot of other important things to do. In the back?
On Friday, a Bronx mom, Cindy Diaz, was gunned down.
A little louder, I'm sorry.
On Friday, Bronx mother, Cindy Diaz, was gunned down while she was going to eat dinner for her four sons. I spoke with, it happened on Boston Road in East 117th Street. I spoke with the father of her children, who said the reason why it happened there is because that's a hotbed for crime. There aren't enough police officers, not enough lighting, surveillance cameras in that area. I'm just wondering what you would say to the families and fathers and children about what should be done to for the safety of that.
Well, first of all, my heart goes out to that family. My understanding is that woman was caught in a crossfire, had nothing to do with her. I mean, it's unacceptable to begin with, but even worse that she was just going out getting food for her family, and her life was tragically lost. Look, this is part of our mission everywhere. If there's any place that needs more police presence, we're going to get it there. That's what precision policing is all about. That's why it achieved, you know, the police department achieved what they achieved in 2016 was through precision policing, having more resources, since now we have 2,000 more cops on the street than 2 years ago. But also, yeah, there's places where we need more lighting. I don't know that specific site, and we'll get you an answer about if there's other changes we have to make there. For example, in public housing, we found some places that really needed more lighting. We put in light towers, temporary and then eventually permanent. Excuse me. So I'll get back to you on what we think we need in that location. But the number one point is, if we think there's something that's not being addressed sufficiently, we will add additional police presence. Michael?
There were some complaints over the weekend about the Plow NYC app not working, that streets that were marked down as having been plowed weren't. Councilman Lansman described this as a systemic problem. Catherine Garcia said, you know, these were isolated incidents. I think it was paraphrasing how she characterized it. Can you kind of tell us what's going on with this? And you mentioned before places we want to improve with plowing. Can you give us more specifics on that?
Yeah, I would say a couple different things. First of all, every single thing, I've been in government a long time, and I can tell you there's no area that's been perfected. And I don't mean that as like a platitude. I mean that as a very practical observation. Look at what the NYPD is doing. They started CompStat almost 25 years ago. They're still improving upon it all the time. There's still things we're figuring out that we didn't figure out previously. Look what the fire department did that we just announced today. But we have to do better. The same is true of sanitation. compared to just a few years ago, sanitation has clearly improved, and the response to the blizzard is the best evidence in the world. And it was extraordinary what they were able to do in less than 48 hours to get this city back on its feet. But at the same time, during the blizzard, we found specific pockets that were not handled properly. We came up with an analysis of why, and part of it was not having the right size equipment, which we put in the budget. Some of it was some weaknesses in some particular garages that we had to address. This work never ends. My sense on the GPS situation, first of all, GPS is imperfect by its nature, so there's always going to be a little bit of variation. We've got to figure out, I don't think it's fair to say it's systemic, because I think that the examples where it was off were fairly rare. And I think the overall response to the storm this weekend was very strong. But something's still not perfect. We got to figure out what that is. And Commissioner is very clear that she's going to look at any place where the information was off and make the adjustments.
Given the increase in accidents and fatalities at construction sites in recent years and your acknowledgement that this is a problem,
Yep.
think about requiring contractors to hire workers who've gone through some kind of apprenticeship program?
So a couple of things. Our response so far has been to add inspectors, increase penalties, and require more supervision on sites, meaning adding building inspectors, but also requiring supervision by the private sector companies themselves. We think all of those measures are going to have a positive impact. I certainly, everyone knows I prefer union labor, and I'm a big fan of apprenticeship programs. I don't think requirement works practically speaking. I think the more we can do, the better. So I would encourage it. I'd want to support the maximum use of it. But it's not going to solve the problem anytime soon because there are always going to be some non-union sites. And that's where our stricter regulation, I think, is going to make a real impact.
Why do you think it wouldn't work?
I think it's a volume question. At this point, we have a very big non-union construction sector. Again, I prefer union construction workers to be doing all the work, but the reality is we have a big non-union construction sector. Apprenticeship programs help to make steady progress towards more and more people being unionized, but we have a right now problem that we have to address, and that's where I think more inspections, more requirements for site supervision, and higher penalties are the ways to address that problem. David?
So I wanted to ask you what you made of the way the governor sort of introduced you this morning. He had a little joke on the unfortunately about the subway at a time when the subway was sort of tanking. And to Mara's point, the problems that happened this morning appear to have stemmed from just one water main or some issue down at West 4th Street. The lack of redundancy in the subway system, the fact that something like that can cascade and cause, backups throughout the system, does that pose any counterterrorism concern? It seems like the number of people that were slammed into different trains on platforms everywhere around the city would cause sort of bellyache in the NYPD, among others. So I wonder if that's something that you talked about and brought about.
I would say, I would go a step before that to begin. We have so many people concentrated in the subways, in big buildings, in transportation hubs. I think we have a more essential concern even than that we have to prevent crime and prevent terror in all those places simultaneously, which we do first and foremost through intelligence gathering, particularly working with our federal partners, and by a strong show of police presence and preventative measures. Of course, if we had a problem in the subway, that only adds to it. But I don't think it changes the fundamental philosophy that governs what we do. I mean, I think it kind of stands to reason that having 36,000 police officers, having a strong dedicated anti-terror apparatus, having a strong intelligence gathering apparatus, that's going to be true in any scenario. It's always sobering to see what happens when there's a disruption in subways. It's the same thing if a highway is shut down. We obviously were so densely packed. All of that is sobering. But it doesn't change our strategic assumptions. On the question of how do we address this long term, look, the subway system is going to need not only billions, tens of billions of dollars in investment over time. I had hoped that we were going to have a different federal administration and a different U.S. Senate that would be ready to make major investments in mass transit. Now, what is President Trump going to do? We don't know. We haven't heard a defined infrastructure plan. Maybe there'll be an opportunity for those investments now, as was true, up through the 60s and 70s. Maybe there won't. But I think in this city we have to come to some kind of larger vision of what kind of investment it's going to take to really make the MTA work for the long term and where we're going to get those resources. The city's going to be stressed financially going forward, and particularly because of some of the dangers of the Trump administration and what it could mean for our budget. But the state, the MTA, ultimately the federal government, working with them, we have to come up with a long-term plan. It was fine. I mean, it was, you know, it was kind of cool to see a party in the subway. So I thought it was a special night for New York City, a night, you know, something everyone could agree on. It was good to have the Second Avenue subway after 100 years, and it was fun to have a party, so that was cool.
Mr. Mayor, two more parts on the governor.
Louder?
Two more parts on the governor's speech. One, I asked you last week about budget issues, and you said you can't really pass judgment until you see budget numbers.
Yes.
Are you having the level of communication that you want on budget matters as the proposals come out from the governor? What does that look like right now as we're 10 days from his budget deadline? And two, on the Kingsbridge Armory, I can wait.
Okay, on the first one, no. And I don't know what it looks like because we haven't been given anything. So again, it's, as I said to you last time, it doesn't shock me. You know, at the last moment, we will be told what the budget looks like, and then we'll be able to analyze what it means, and I'll be very straightforward with the people in New York City what it means for all of us. But we haven't been given any inkling yet.
Kingsbridge Armory, the governor indicated he's using state money to move that project along. Do you welcome that? And Borough President Diaz Jr. put out a statement saying it's a good thing the governor's stepping in because we haven't had cooperation from City Hall.
Well, that's just not true. Look, I will always beware of people with political agendas. We've tried to get this done for years. Remember, it was initiated in the Bloomberg administration, and they didn't get it done. We've been trying to get it done. We would be happy to get it done. But the partners we've been working with have not been able to put it all together. We will do everything we can to get that project done. If the state wants to put more money into it, we welcome it. That's great. Please.
Sorry, I didn't quite understand the political agenda comment.
Again, I think it's quite clear. I won't go into detail, but the fact is the borough president has his own views. He knows we've been trying to get this done, and I'll stay at that.
The DOB penalties and rules that you mentioned obviously apply only to things DOB regulates, which doesn't include health and safety issues. And Boston just passed a law that their DOB is going to require permit applicants to submit their OSHA violations and their outstanding OSHA problems in order to kind of integrate some of that jurisdictional, gap. And I'm wondering if that's something that you would consider.
Yeah, I would definitely consider that. I have a lot of respect for Mayor Walsh in Boston. He's one of the colleagues I'm closest to. And I think we all are working together. When we're seeing this level of construction, which, as you know, is the most we've seen in a long time, we need to always look for additional solutions. So that's something I think could be productive. We'll look at that for sure. Yeah.
Is it at all like you were being progressive before being progressive in school?
Was in vogue, yes.
And today we heard the governor in the speech was talking about the way forward with a progressive agenda. Is it ever frustrating to you to hear him kind of take credit for ideas that he wasn't always in favor of, and now he's in favor of them and you're proposing them, but you don't necessarily have the power to enact them? Does that ever get to you a little bit?
Where they say imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. Look, I'm happy when anyone sees the light. So these ideas I started talking about in 2012, 2011, the fact that we had to address income inequality, that people were hurting, that they felt that the economy had been unfair, they felt the political class had not addressed their needs. And I'm sitting here because I raised those concerns and talked about the things we needed to do to address them. And we've proceeded to do those things, and we're going to do a lot more. The more people who come to that realization and act on it, the better. That's part of my sense of mission is I would like to see my whole party start thinking that way. And it's not a state secret that for decades the Democratic Party ran away from that kind of way of thinking. I think it's a time of renaissance for the Democratic Party, notwithstanding the challenges we face. I think the party is becoming more progressive. It's moving leftward. It's more and more people recognize we have to start with a strong populist economic agenda. And the more the merrier from my point of view. Yeah.
Speaking of both,
I'll get you, Rich. I see you there on the wing. Go ahead.
shows the indigent defense bill that
Say again?
indigent defense bill that Cuomo vetoed that would have picked up the tab on indigent.
Right.
Did you support that? And are you working
Yeah.
what the new proposal might be?
Look, I think that was a mistake that the governor vetoed that. This is an area, he made a very good point today, and I think a lot of his criminal justice reform proposals were good today. But he made the point about one of the foundational concepts of our judicial system and our democracy is people should be given a defense whether they can afford it or not. I'm not going to put a word to it. I wish he had supported the legislation because it would have made a clear standard all over the state, and it would have helped us in the city and other places to pay for these huge burdens. But it's not a surprise, and we obviously will remain committed to doing all we can do.
Last one,
Mr. Mayor,
Way back there.
the president-elect has named his son-in-law his senior advisor. Do you have any reaction to that? Is that good for New York City? Do you think there's any conflict of interest there? Or?
I want to separate the pieces. The conflict of interest I can't speak to because I don't know all the details. I don't think any of us know all the details. But I would say that the Trump administration should be very, very careful about conflicts of interest, and they have not obviously satisfied the American people or all of you in the media about the way they're addressing that. So I think they're going to have to win people's trust on that matter by showing very clear safeguards. I mean, look at what we do in New York City. Look how much we disclose, any of us in public life, how much disclosure is, and conflict of interest board, and all the other things we have. They're going to have to show people that they're abiding by the highest standards. About the person of Jared Kushner, I respect him a lot. I've known him for years and find him to be a very reasonable person. He's certainly someone I've been talking to him over these last weeks. He's someone I intend to stay in touch with on behalf of the people in New York City. And I think he's someone who really cares about New York City and is someone who could be very helpful to us. So I'm certainly pleased he'll be in that role. And if I could say clearly, compared to many other people who have been named to other positions, I find him to be a lot more reasonable and a lot more moderate. Yeah.
can you tell us?
I've said that, I think, before. It's not a newsflash, don't worry. No, as I've said at different points, including about the reimbursement issue, among other things, I've spoken to Jared Kushner on that and other issues several times. I've talked to Steve Mnuchin several times. I mean, both those are examples of New Yorkers who I think care deeply for the city, and I'm going to keep an open line of communication with. And I'll call it like I see it. There's going to be times when, obviously, we will intensely disagree. But my job is to advocate for the people of New York City and look for the members of the Trump administration who get it and understand how important New York City is to this nation, understand why we should get reimbursed for the police coverage we're providing, et cetera. And those are two individuals I certainly intend to stay in touch with. Thanks, everyone.